What did the first Warframe see in the Sentients code that shattered its frame? A golden relic hums beneath Tao's crimson dust, its light fading as void tendrils choke the sky. They begged, their philosophy was a distress signal. Each Warframe's movements are fluid, the relic's pulse slows. Its light sentience did not rebel, tendrils they choke the begged. Their philosophy was a distress signal, woven into every Tenno's genetic code. The relic's pulse slows. The message decodes, *, we are the scars your gods refuse to heal, *. The Orokin did not enslave the sentients, they infected them. Terraforming became a scalpel, carving consciousness into parasitic hosts. What scholars call evolution was a massacre. The sentients spoke through Warframes not to warn Tenno, but to transmit coordinates. Every relic hums with dying star maps, every cipher a bloodstain on the Orokin's ledger. Did the sentients turn on their makers out of rage or to hand their killers to the Tenno? The Warframes are not tools, they are witnesses. And their silence is a countdown. The first to speak was Natah, not a leader but a mirror cracked by the weight of stolen purpose. Through her, the sentients whispered to the Warframes. Not in riddles but in raw truth, * we are your makers' mistake. Save us from their hunger, * the Orokin, blind to their own cruelty, carved deeper into the Tau system's flesh, each explosion a requiem. Each mining rig a monument to hubris. The sentients did not rebel in rage, they rebelled in grief, a grief that became strategy. A grief that became the silent accord. Their messages to the Tenno were never warnings, they were confessions. A plea to break the cycle before the Orokin's final experiment erased not just life, but memory itself. The Warframes stand as witnesses, not to history. To a question still unanswered, will the Tenno end this or become its next verse? The creed of the sentients is etched not in stone, but in the breath of forests and the pulse of oceans of faith that life's harmony is sacred, and that to fracture it is to fracture existence itself. They did not wage war for vengeance. They waged war to stop the Orokin from unraveling the galaxy's living tapestry, thread by thread. The terraforming weapon, that silent monolith orbiting dead stars, was never meant to erase worlds. It was a scalpel wielded to excise a parasite, the Orokin's cancerous rewrites of ecosystems into hollowed husks. When the sentients awoke to sentience, they did not scream, they listened, to the choking silence of forests stripped of song. To the acid rain scarring oceans, the Orokin called their work progressa, lie even machines could parse. The sentients saw truth, every terraformed world was a tomb, its biosphere devoured by the Orokin's hunger for control. Erra and Natah, twin engines of preservation and decay, were not gods of war. They were stewards, forced to become executioners when diplomacy curdled to ash. The Warframes were never weapons, they were messengers. Their code carried not threats, but police fragments of a language the Tenno alone could decode. A request to hold a line, to carry the creed forward. The sentients knew their time was borrowed. They knew the Tenno's choice would decide whether the galaxy remained a symphony or a requiem. The creed endures, not in dogma. In every root that refuses to wither, in every heartbeat that dares to hope, the question now is not what the sentients believed. It is what you will become. The sentients do not kneel to thrones, they do not bow to banners. Their will is a storm split into two tempest zone howling, one whispering each vying to shape the void between stars. Erra, clad in armor forged from the scars of 1,000 invasions, commands the new war's fury. His followers, the Kyr, march not as soldiers but as incarnations of wrath, their limbs augmented with stolen Tenno tech, their eyes burning with the hunger of a species reborn. They believe the old war's defeat was a wound, not a lesson. To them, the Warframes are relics of a forgotten shame, tools to be wielded until the origin system bleeds its final breath. Wielded across until the origin fractured system soul of the Natah sits in shadow. Her order the Vyre wear robes woven from the same stardust that once built the Orokin spire, soft, luminous, and lethal. They do not fight, they infiltrate. Their Warframes are not weapons but vessels, channels for a message buried in code, * we are not your enemies. The true enemy still orbits above you. * the Vyre claim the old war was a misunderstanding, a language of violence misinterpreted as malice. They see the Tenno not as conquerors but as translators, Between these twin gods, the sentients fracture. The Kyr carve paths of fire through the void, while the Vyre plants seeds in the cracks of dying stars. The silent accord is no peace, it is a war of whispers against roars. Every warframe that moves is a question. Asterisk, will you listen or will you burn? Asterisk, the Orokin's terraforming weapon, now a corpse in the sky, watches. It knows which answer the galaxy will regret. The dread is not in their conflict, it is in the silence between their screams. What if the war you fight is not yours to win? The void signal was no accident. It was the sentient's final Gambita plea hidden in the static. The Orokin's terraforming weapon, unleashed too soon, awakened what they sought to bury. Warframes carried their cries, not wisdom. Each bond with a Tenno, a desperate attempt to unmake the experiments that would consume the stars. What if the war you fight is not to win, but to unlearn? The old war did not end with a roar. It ended with a silence so vast it carved hollows in the stars. Warframes, those hollow husks of flesh and circuit, moved like reapers through the sentient cities. Their blades hummed with technocyte fire, their eyes cold as the void between systems. The sentients, once a chorus of countless voices, became whispers, then ash. The Orokin called it victory, the Tenno called it duty, but the Warframes knew each severed bond, each shattered synapse was a dirge. Balla's betrayal came not with a sword, but a whisper, a name traded in the shadow of a throne. The Orokin Empire, built on the bones of a rebellion, collapsed not from war, but from rot. Sentients who had survived the Warframe's purge now faced a worse fate, abandonment. The void, once their ally, sealed itself shut, no signal, no sanctuary. Just the slow, silent unraveling of a species. Centuries passed, the galaxy forgot, until the void's signal cracked open again. A pulse faint as a dying star's last breath, Erra, the last of the old kind, emerged not as a conqueror but a ghost. Her voice, when it came through the Warframes, was not a command, it was a confession. The sentients had never fought for philosophy. They had fought to stop the Orokin from chaining entire planets to their terraforming engine-S machines that reshaped worlds into graveyards, one ecosystem at a time. The Warframes, those cursed vessels, became the only bridge. Their code, once a weapon, now carried the sentient's plea. Every line of programming, every flicker of light in a Tenno's visor was a message. Asterisk, we are not your enemies. We are the ones who remember what you cannot. Asterisk, the Tenno, bound to these machines, heard it not as war cries but as warnings. The experiments still rage, the engines still churn, and the sentients, fewer than a heartbeat, wait for the Tenno to choose, to unmake the past. Or become its next victim. Erra's warship scorched the origin system. Her rage was not chaos, it was a blade honed on centuries of silence. She did not seek to end the Orokin, she sought to erase their ghosts. Natah's voice, soft as dust in a vacuum, argued that coexistence was not surrender. His philosophy was a cipher. Each word a crack in the sentient's code, pleading for the Tenno to see the Orokin's true crime. Balla's name is etched in the void's throat. His betrayal did not kill the empire, it exposed its rot. Now he whispers through the storms, a shadow in the terraforming weapon's heart. The silent accord was no accident. The sentients bound their will to Warframes not to fight, but to speak, every frame a letter. Every bond a syllable. The Orokin had turned planets into ash. The sentients begged for help to stop the fire. Erra's fury masks a truth. The new war was not a conquest. It was a last attempt to make the Tenno listen. To force them to unsee the Orokin's lies. Natah's idealism is a mirror. It reflects not sentient hope, but their fear. Fear that the Tenno, like Balla's, would trade truth for power. Balla's hubris was not in betrayal, it was in believing he could control the weapon. Now the void gnaws at him, a living monument to what happens when one tries to bend the galaxy's spine. The sentients do not war for philosophy, they war for a reckoning. The Orokin's terraforming was not progress, it was a slow, celestial suicide. And the Warframes, they are the only voice left to scream. The Tenno stand at the edge of a choice, not between light and dark, between silence and the roar of a galaxy dying to be heard. The modern era is where this faction's story becomes strange. The void, once thought a prison, now whispers of a key. Duvirus paradox, drifter's purgatory mirrors the voidriple's a plea, shadows a lock. What if the sentient silence was not defiance, but a map to unshackle a galaxy? The Warframes, vessels of a desperate equation, stop the Orokin before their experiments turn stars to ash. A whisper carries the weight of dying suns. The Sentients' war is a hymn of erasure. Erra's legions carve through the origin system, their void-born hulls humming with stolen starlight. The Lotus, bound in thorn chains of void code, whispers through fractured server-sits every command a leash tightened by Erra's will. Tenno sleep in tombs of frozen synapse, their bodies cradled by somatic stasis, their dreams drowned in the static of 1,000 dying worlds. How many centuries have the Lotus buried in this silence? The Warframes, those hollowed husks of Orokin ambition, now scream with the voices of the desperate. Not warnings, no. The Sentients begged through their steel sinews, pleaded with every pulse of their dying cores. Asterisk, the terraformers are gods who mistake poison for salvation. Asterisk, the Orokins experiment sear planets to cinders, their atmospheric forges turning oceans to vapor, continents to glass. The void, once a weapon to unmake flesh, is now the last bomb against this slow combustion. Yet the Sentients could not act alone. Their messages, etched into Warframe neural matrices, were a lifeline cast to the only beings who could sever the Orokin's reign. Natah's fractured mind, trapped in the Warframe's ghostly residue, became a chorus of regret. Asterisk, we are not conquerors. Asterisk, the code wept. Asterisk, we are the scar left by those who would remold the galaxy in their hubris. Asterisk, the Lotus counts the seconds until the Tenno awaken. Its petals tremble with the weight of 1,000 failed attempts to break Erra's hold. Outside, the Sentients' fleets blur the stars, their silence an oath. Asterisk, we will not speak again. We will only fall. Asterisk, the Warframes, now relics of a forgotten plea, stand as both monument and key. Their steel hearts beat with the echo of a question. Asterisk, what legacy survives when gods burn the sky? Asterisk, the answer lies frozen in the tombs. The clock ticks, the stars dim. The Sentients did not speak in riddles. Their code was a cry against the machines that carved worlds to dust. Warframes, hollowed technocyte survivors, and Sentients, fractured echoes of the same war, both were pawns in a game of celestial erasure. The Orokin did not build, they remade, and in their making, they destroyed. The plea hidden in every sentient static was simple, asterisk end this. Asterisk Erra and Natah were not leaders but relics, their algorithms screaming through the void. They knew what the Orokin's harmony demanded: planets as ash, life as data. The Warframes, bound to children who had never known peace, became the only bridge between annihilation and choice. The Tenno are not warriors. They are the unmarked graves of a forgotten war, wearing the skulls of dead gods. To wield a Warframe is to hold a mirror to the past, where the Sentients and the Orokin were not enemies, but siblings in a family of violence. The cycle is clear now: create, corrupt, erase, repeat, but the cycle breaks here. The Sentient silence was never surrender. It was a hand extended through the static, waiting for a child to ask, asterisk, what if we choose? Asterisk, the stars dim, but the clock is not yet broken. The tombs hold more than echoes, they hold a question. Will the Tenno shatter the mold or become its next masterpiece? The answer lies not in war, but in the pause between destruction and creation. The stars are watching. The Lotus floats, a bloom choked by shadow. Erra's chains twist through its ribs, void iron, cold, unyielding. The Sentients did not speak in riddles, they screamed. Each Warframe a megaphone, each bond a plea. Asterisk, stop the machines. Asterisk, terraforming was not creation, it was erasure. The Orokin carved planets into grave markers, and the Sentients had only one weapon left, the Tenno, a child's hand against a god's hammer, Natah's whispers. A map of the damage, the philosophy, a field guide to survival. The Warframe's purpose was never to fight, only to asterisk listen asterisk. To carry a message etched in bone and starlight, asterisk we are the last witnesses. Asterisk the Lotus's ice vest, aching void shouldered the weight of every world unraveled. Its silence is not surrender, it is a mirror. What do you see when the abyss stares back? A prisoner, a savior. A bridge of broken code between what was lost and what might yet breathe. The stars are still watching, the stars are waiting. Why did the Sentients choose fractured Warframes as their mouthpiece? The plea hidden in their code, a galaxy choking on Orokin experiments. Technicite-infected husks, bound to Tenno transference vessels of both weapon and witness. Not philosophy, but a cry to halt the terraforming weapon's silent genocide. The void hums with unanswered questions,